Walkthrough for the activity Debugging Factorial. So at the top here we have the starter code, and here we have some debugging tips which are useful for you guys to read, especially the Comp 1511 debugging guide. And here we have the task. So this exercise takes in an integer as input, calculates the factorial of the number and prints it out. Currently it has some issues and it's our job to figure them out and fix the code. Here we have the example, so we can use this to see if our program is behaving as expected. And we have an assumption here, so we can assume that we will not be given negative numbers. And then at the bottom here we have the style and auto test commands for this exercise. So let's grab the starter code, run this in our terminals, and now let's open the file. Okay, so here we are. The first thing that we do when we're debugging is that we compile the program to see if there's any style or syntax issues. It'll be picked up. So here's the first one, a warning on line 15, which says implicit declaration of function print, and the DCC explanation says you're calling a function named print on line 15, but DCC doesn't recognize the function print. So do you mean printf, which is correct. So let's fix that and recompile. Okay. So now we're getting one on line 16, and again, it's saying we've misspelt the function name, so scan isn't the function in C, it's scanf, so we'll fix that up. Okay, and now we're getting one here on line 16, also with our scan statement, and the warning message is a bit confusing, but if we have a look at the DCC explanation, it says perhaps we've forgotten an ampersand before num on line 16, which is exactly correct, so let's put that in and recompile. Okay, so now we're getting an expected expression on line 20, and that's the colon on our while loop. And this error isn't too descriptive, so let's run DCC help. Okay, so it's telling us review the while loop, check if there's any syntax or spelling errors, and try to fix them. So we know in the while loops we have curly braces, not colons, to indicate the body. So let's add the curly braces and pop in the code there, and let's recompile our program. Okay, so now we're getting an error on line 21 that we're missing a semicolon, so let's add that in. And we're also getting another error here, a warning, with print saying that print is invalid, and it's saying, I think you meant printf here in the DCC explanation, which is correct. So let's fix that and recompile. Okay, so here it's giving us another warning, and in the DCC explanation it's saying your printf has less argument values than percent codes in the format string, so there should be two variables at the end here because there's 2%ds. So if we have a look at the sample in the examples, we can see that it prints the factorial of 3 is 6, for example, and 3 is the value that the user inputs, so that's the num variable, and 6 is the result, which is the factorial, which is the factorial variable. So now we can recompile, and it looks like it's happy, so let's run the program and see what happens. So import 3, and nothing happens, which is not good, so let's quit out of this with Control C and see what's going on. So execution stopped on line 21, which is the body of our while loop. We can see that counter is 3, factorial is 0, and num is 3. We can see we're just kind of stuck here and we're not going through our loop, which means we're missing our iterator. So let's add an iterator for counter because that's what we're comparing in our condition of our while statement. So let's just make it an iterator for now and see what happens. Recompile and rerun the program. Let's enter 3 again. And yet again, nothing is happening. So let's quit out and see what's going on. So we can see here from the values when our execution stopped, counter is a pretty large number, factorial is 0, and number is 3. So it's pretty weird that we were iterating through our loop so many times, factorial never changed, and we were just going forever. So the reason why this is occurring is because we're making counter larger, but we're checking if counter is greater than 0. And if we just keep adding numbers, it's always going to be greater than 0. So let's try and make this a decrementer instead of a incrementer. And let's just keep in the back of our minds the issue of factorial not changing and see if it still happens now that we've fixed to be a decrementer. Okay, so it looks like the value of factorial is still at 0. So let's have a think of why this might be the case. So number is 0 and factorial is 0 at the beginning of our program. Then number gets changed to user input, so in this case the value of 3, and counter is also set to the value of number, so in this case 3. So while counter is greater than 0, where counter is 3, factorial equals to factorial times counter. Factorial has the value of 0, so we're basically saying factorial equals to 0 times counter, which we know that 0 times anything equals to 0, so this is causing an issue. So let's change this to a 1 and see if this fixes our code. Okay, so it looks like this was what was missing. So let's try some of the other examples to see if that was the case everywhere, if there's any other bugs we need to fix. Okay, so this looks all right, and these 3 cases are matching the examples. So now we can go ahead and run the auto tests, see if we pass all of those. Okay, so these look good. And now finally we can run 1511 style. And it looks like I've got an issue in my style, and I need to replace the header comment with my name and ZID. So let's change this to my name and my ZID. And then let's put today's date, June 2023. And rerun the style command to make sure everything's all good. And yeah, everything's all good. So that's the completed debugging factorial exercise.